guys! So this is kind of like a part 2 to my last video, but instead of talking about computer generated images, we're going to be talking about practical effects. And I realize I probably should have made this one first before I made the CGI video, but oh well. Since the beginning of motion pictures in the late 19th century, filmmakers were experimenting with their cameras to create illusions or trick effects. Since there are so many examples of practical effects, I decided not to just simply go through the history, but to split certain milestones into categories. And although it is a masterpiece of experimental film editing, I won't really be talking about A Man with a Movie Camera because I wanted to focus more on narrative films, but it's actually really cool and you should check it out. Pioneering French filmmaker Georges Méliès was dubbed the father of visual effects because his films exemplified trick photography. He could make objects disappear, change, and move on their own. His most notable film, A Trip to the Moon, contained about 30 scenes with illusionary cinematic editing techniques, such as superimposed images, double exposures, dissolves, and stop-motion jump cuts. Editing is a huge part of why film is an illusory narrative medium. Cutting out and manipulating images can deceive an audience into believing a false circumstance, which early filmmakers took advantage of. Whenever you think of stop motion, your first thought is probably animation, but stop motion was used way before cell animation came along. It was a device used to trick the audience into thinking an object was moving on its own. The first use of stop motion was in 1898 for a film called The Humpty Dumpty Circus, which has unfortunately been lost. Only a still image remains. But stop motion continued to be a useful editing technique for many films afterward. In 1907's The Haunted Hotel, or Strange Adventures of a Traveler, objects are manipulated by an invisible ghost. Simple tasks like slicing bread and pouring coffee are made seamless with this help of stop motion. Now, I can't talk about stop motion without talking about claymation. And I can't talk about claymation without mentioning these two incredible artists, Willis O'Brien and Ray Harryhausen. Willis O'Brien created small-scale puppet clay model dinosaurs for the film The Lost World in 1925. The models were filmed frame by frame on miniature sets and landscapes. Live action and stop-motion animation would later be combined by putting two negatives together using split screens. O'Brien's intense focus on detail gave his movie monsters a life and soul, even going so far as to build small bladders inside the models to make them look like they were breathing on screen. Willis O'Brien also used claymation for another film 7 years later. You might have heard of it. King Kong is O'Brien's most famous work. The model of Kong was made of a metal skeleton and then layered with foam rubber, latex, and rabbit fur. The release of King Kong was met with critical acclaim and made $2 million at the box office in 1933. This movie not only blew away audiences, but inspired a man named Ray Harryhausen into creating his own stop-motion animations, and later became O'Brien's protege. One of his most celebrated works is the fighting skeletons sequence in Jason and the Argonauts. In Harryhausen's own words, "I had 3 men fighting 7 skeletons, and each skeleton had 5 appendages to move in each separate frame of film. This meant at least 35 animation movements, each synchronized to the actors' movements. Some days I was producing less than 1 second of screen time. In the end, the whole sequence took a record 4.5 months. Miniature sets and crafts have been used in film for most of its history. The first use of a miniature set and forced perspective was in the 1927 classic Metropolis. In an article in Science and Innovation, published when the film premiered, it said, "The miniature set was used in the filming of this remarkable motion picture. Toy trains and automobiles were pulled along the bridges by means of wires. The airplanes were suspended by a wire which was pulled by an operator outside the set. At times, full-size lower stories were used, the image of the upper stories being reflected in a mirror to blend with them." Miniature sets are a staple in most science fiction and fantasy movies, such as 2001: A Space Odyssey and the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Puppetry has also been used in film since the very beginning, But the first use of an animatronic was the singing birds in the spoonful of sugar scene from Mary Poppins. The popularity of animatronics grew in the 1970s and 1980s. Jaws has one of the most famous animatronics in cinema. Although the animatronic shark ended up with minimal screen time because of technical issues, when it did appear, it made an impact. Along with prosthetic makeup, animatronics were also used in a lot of horror movies to create realistic violence. And again, these aren't the only examples of practical effects. There are many that I could talk about, such as split screens, reverse editing, and double exposure. But then we'd be here all day. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching, and if you liked this video, why don't you hit that like button? And if you like this video and my other videos and you want to see more, please hit subscribe and you will see more. And if you have a film-related topic that you want me to cover, please let me know in the comments. And if you have something to say about this video, you have a criticism or a question, or if you just want to tell me how great I am at this, let me know. Okay, I'll shut up. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.